4 years ago,
It gives me goosebumps.
the world watched as then Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin kneeled on the body of George Floyd, the last moments of Floyd's life, and the birth of a global reckoning on police brutality.
We were lied to. And the whole issue, the whole way we think about George Floyd was wrong, including the way I thought of him until about 10 minutes ago. I had no idea that Derek Chauvin didn't kill him.
On the anniversary of George Floyd's death, we were assaulted with messages commanding us to never forget. But of course, we do. We forget the man Floyd was, and we forget it's an election year, and we forget that cynical tyrants in the media don't care about truth. They care about clicks.
But the people are retarded.
Since you'll only get part of the story from them, you're forced to get the other part from independent media. So today, we're looking at the death of George Floyd on Indie Thinker. Welcome to the show. My name is Reed Huberman, and I'm the founder of Indie Thinker Media. Now, last Saturday marked the supposed anniversary of George Floyd's death, and Democrats like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the very talented and very honest Cori Bush all came out to celebrate, and they celebrated the only way they can, by reiterating erroneous claims that police are systemically racist against black people. Now, if you actually want to listen to somebody that will tell you the truth, I send you to my friend, Roland Fryer.
So what my paper showed, you'll see tomorrow, like some of you, was that, yes, we saw some bias in the low-level uses of force, every day pushing up against cars and things like that. People seem to like that result. But we didn't find any racial bias in police shootings. Now, that was really surprising to me because I expected to see it. The little-known fact is I had 8 full-time RAs that it took to do this over nearly a year. When I found this surprising result, I hired 8 fresh ones and redid it to make sure. They came up with the same exact answer, and I thought it was robust. And then I went to go give it, and my God, all hell broke loose.
But now let's be realistic. Cori and company can't be expected to keep up with, all of the lies that they're telling, so it's important to state a couple of things up front. Floyd's death was tragic. How he died will always be a matter of contention. But like the media lies of COVID, there is a fact pattern that's very easy to follow, and should you desire to know the truth, you can. It's just that you're not going to hear it from the mainstream media, who wants to cherry pick facts that essentially leaves out everything except the result of what happened that day when George Floyd died. I'll be here every year telling you the rest of the story if they're going to continue to celebrate the way they want to celebrate. So let's start with George Floyd's past. Now, before I jump into his past, let me just say that who George Floyd was does not justify his death per se, but it does go to cause. When you see a man that has a past criminal record that includes the fact that George Floyd has been arrested multiple times and used several aliases in those arrests. In 1997, Floyd was convicted of the delivery of cocaine. In 1998, Floyd was convicted of aggravated robbery using a deadly weapon. In 2001, he refused to identify himself to a police officer. In 2002, he was arrested for possession of cocaine and criminal trespass. In 2004, he was arrested for delivery of cocaine. In 2005, he was arrested for possession of cocaine with intent to deliver. In 2008, he was arrested for aggravated robbery with a firearm. And this is where he took a loaded gun and placed it against a woman's stomach when he learned that that woman was pregnant. In 2019, he was arrested for narcotics violation. And of course, in 2020, he was arrested for trying to purchase something at a convenience store with counterfeit bills, in which the attendant said that the man seemed awfully drunk and could not control himself. Now, with a man that has that kind of criminal history, you might think to yourself that that is a fact pattern that deserves to kind of be wrestled with when we think about the events that took place after he was arrested for passing that counterfeit bill and that ultimately led to his death. But instead of looking at his criminal history, we are quickly told to venerate this man as though he is some type of martyr or saint. Now, the liberals will come out and say, no one's praising the man. We just want you to be honest about his murder at the hand of a white cop. And then to that, I would say, no, you're telling us to venerate this man. You want to create murals. You want to put statues up of the guy. You want us to even oddly put kind of biblical language around this man's life, as you can see here.
What we saw. So again, thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
And the right represent the purification that George Floyd died for us, each and every last one of us. Had no George Floyd died, we wouldn't be here. God chose him.
But look, I get it. When you don't believe in Jesus, really, and you just claim that you're a Catholic but never go to Mass and support the LGBTQ radical activists and their plight for civil rights to make sure that they can chop off the body parts of a small child. When you're about that business, I can understand why you need a lot of help washing away your white liberal guilt.
Y'all have any faith, bruh.
And maybe you can use George Floyd to help you with that. But more importantly, when we look at this man's past, it goes to helping us understand why George Floyd may not have wanted to be arrested that day and why he resisted arrest in the way that he did. Now, I understand this doesn't justify his death per se if he was murdered, but it definitely goes to cause in the way that he was acting, among other things. And now, as we look at the actual events that took place when he was arrested, we can see how often George Floyd resists arrest. First and foremost, you can see here that he was told to put his hands up 9 times, at least 9 times, before he finally does so by the police when he was first addressed.
Let me see your hands.
Damn, man.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Let me see your other hand.
Please, Mr.
Both hands.
Do nothing.
Put your hands up right now. Let me see your other hand.
All right. What I do though? What do we do?
Put your hand up there. Put your hand up there. Keep your hands on the wheel. Keep your hands on the wheel.
Yes, sir.
So it's clear George Floyd is in distress and that he doesn't want to be arrested because of his extensive criminal past. Well, he's out back on the street, so I don't know why he's too worried about it. He could just find a George Soros DA to take care of this matter very, very quickly for him. But he doesn't want to be arrested, but also something else is going on, and you can see this in his continued erratic behavior. If you remember the events of that day when Derek Chauvin finally had Floyd on the ground and put his knee on him, you'll remember that George Floyd was crying out for his mother. Well, earlier in his interaction with the police, he also recognizes the fact that his mother is dead, and in fact, she died 2 years before this event took place.
I just lost my mom, man.
So as you can see, George Floyd continues to display puzzling behavior, not only because he doesn't want to get arrested yet again, but also because there seems to be something going on with him that is causing him to get a little bit excited and a little bit delirious. You can see that this behavior is coming from the massive amount of drugs that was in the man's system at the time of his arrest. And there is a simple fact pattern that is left out of every single media narrative that you'll hear on this, and this is the simple fact that foam was starting to form around the mouth of George Floyd, as you can see here.
Ouchie, man.
Are you on something right now?
No, nothing. Because you acting more erratic. Man,
Let's go.
Scared, man.
Let's go.
God, you got foam around your mouth too? Yes. I was just whooping earlier.
Now, the reason that foam around Floyd's mouth is so important, and the reason the police officer quickly identifies it as a sign of drug use, is that foam around the mouth is an indication that either an individual has mixed narcotics and then taken it, or, and could be both, he is in the act of overdose right there. So an opioid overdose can cause pulmonary edema. A fluid leaks and fills up the spaces of the lungs and then comes out as foam on the mouth. And then it is typically followed with the kind of erratic behavior that we can see here. Now, Floyd just came from a car, and a police officer is trying to place him in a police vehicle, and he complains that he is claustrophobic and then resists arrest repeatedly when they tried to place him inside the vehicle.
Take a seat. Okay. Why are you having trouble walking?
Because my hands
roll the
are hurt.
windows down,
We won't,
okay?
please, man. Please don't do this.
Take a seat.
I'm going in, Mr. Officer. I'm going
No,
in.
you're not.
I gotta go in.
Take a seat.
Grab a seat, man.
Man, y'all don't believe me, Mr. Officer.
Take a seat.
I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of guy, man.
Take a seat.
No, I'm gonna die here.
Take a
I'm
seat.
gonna die, man.
You need to take a seat right now.
And I just had COVID, man. I don't want to go back to that. Please.
Sit.
Please.
Take a seat.
Please, man. Please. No,
Take a seat.
I can't choke. I can't breathe, officer. Please.
Fine.
So as you can see, Floyd's behavior continues to get more and more erratic, and before he is even on the ground, he already says he can't breathe. And he was tested for COVID and was found to be positive with COVID. So not only does he seem to be experiencing symptoms of excited delirium, he is also probably not breathing as great as he could simply because he has COVID. So any person can clearly see that regardless of what kind of fentanyl the man is on, when you act this way, your blood pressure is going to get high, your adrenaline's going to start running, and it is going to have deleterious effects to your body. Now, these are all important things to notice because as we come to the aftermath after George Floyd died, we find some pretty interesting things in terms of the medical examiner's report. While it is true that the medical examiner's report did conclude that George Floyd died because he had constricted airways, it is important to note that the medical examiner's report had nothing about contusions or bruising on Floyd's neck, and it conveniently left out the fact that Floyd was suffering from acromegaly, which is most likely the cause for the cardiovascular disease that was in his body, and the fact that he had COVID couldn't have helped his breathing very much either. But probably the most explosive thing about the Floyd case that you won't hear is that within about 24 hours of the medical examiner receiving Floyd's case, the FBI oddly wanted to be involved and met with the medical examiner. Now, we don't know and won't ever know exactly what those meetings led to, but let's just say that it seems oddly suspicious, especially in light of the fact that shortly after that meeting, the Hennepin County prosecutor Amy Tamburino said this in a deposition. I called Dr. Baker, who was the medical examiner, early that morning to tell him about the case and to see if he would perform the autopsy on Mr. Floyd. He called me later in the day on that Tuesday night, and he told me there was no medical findings that showed any injury to the vital structures of Mr. Floyd's neck. There were no medical indications of asphyxia or strangulation. He said to me, Amy, what happens when actual evidence doesn't match up with the public narrative or that everyone's decided on? This is the kind of case that ends careers. That damning deposition was also followed up by a sex discrimination and retaliation lawsuit that Amy Tamburino, the prosecutor in question, filed against the city, in which she won a $190,000 suit. Now, we don't know the details of that suit, but let's just say somebody be lying. Let's go to one last final piece in the aftermath of George Floyd's death that seems odd that we need to acknowledge, and that is the rhetoric of defund the police and how those mostly peaceful but fiery protests saw the evacuation of a police station ordered by the mayor of the city.
I made the decision to evacuate the 3rd precinct.
So here's my not so subtle accusation in light of the fact that the FBI was involved in this local case in Minneapolis very early on, the fact that the medical examiner left things out of his report, and the fact that upon deposition, Amy Tamburino said that the medical examiner was really conflicted about whether or not he should tell the truth. When you look at all of that and the fact that the mayor ceded a police precinct to a bunch of fiery but mostly peaceful protesters, it makes you wonder if this wasn't an inside job to try to create mass panic and chaos so that the Democratic Party could suggest that Donald Trump was unfit and look what's happening under his watch. And Donald Trump, of course, is a fascist racist and shouldn't be trusted, and we must vote him out of office in 2024. The fact that this is on the cusp of a major federal election should tell us something. And by the way, the Democratic Party has been doing this forever to try to secure the black vote, because Donald Trump happens to actually be pretty popular with black people. In fact, right now he's polling around 17%. So I wouldn't put it past these bunch of tyrants to try to shine as negative a light on Donald Trump as they could to create this racial tension in America and then blame him for it so simply they could win an election. By the way, this is also why Democrats in 2024 are amping up their efforts not to just go on the defensive to try to make sure that they maintain their voter bloc amongst blacks, but also they are actively attacking Christian evangelicals as Christian nationalists because they know that one of the strongest voter blocs in the Republican Party are Christians. So they want to try to do as much damage to that voter bloc as they possibly can and extort people to try to vote for them because they have no morals. So here's why all of this matters. Not only because the truth matters and society is built upon the truth, and if we don't know the truth, we cannot function, but also because Voltaire said this: if you can convince people of absurdities, you can convince them to commit atrocities. The purpose of secularism wasn't ever, I hope we know this, to bring about a more rational way of thinking. The arguments for God's existence are robust. If you don't agree, it's either because you don't have any idea what you're talking about, or you're lying. The purpose of secularism has been always not to create a more rational society, a more fact-based society, but to remove faith in God from a group of people so that they are easier to control. If you do not have a higher authority, you will gladly take the lesser authorities, especially in a time of crisis. In other words, believing nothing is a great way to get people to believe anything. And when the poop hits the fan, you will do whatever it takes to help your family and to end the chaos and to find a reprieve. That's why Hillary Clinton and her buddies love crisis, because it's a great opportunity.
It is an old friend of mine and my husband's, and was in the White House when Bill was there, and he said, you know, never waste a good crisis.
So if we're going to use George Floyd as a symbol, I'll say he's a symbol, all right, but he's a symbol of the depth of depravity that a bunch of greedy elitists will stoop to in order to secure power for themselves. And there is no limit to that sinfulness when they don't think God is watching. It's why we need him. This is why America has been and should remain a Christian nation steeped in Christian beliefs. If we persist in putting our faith in the government and in the people who occupy those positions of power, I can't help but believe that we should brace ourselves for more fiery but peaceful protests, because a people without hope are easy to control, which is why we need something bigger to believe in. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to check our sponsors down below in the description of this podcast. They help us make these shows, and they can help you. And don't forget to check out Indie Thinker exclusives and extras by signing up for our newsletters. But most importantly, thanks for watching, and go with God.